He's advisor, but I don't see him. So should we start with that? Oh, okay.
Yeah, now, when we finish this, we will leave, right? Or we stay? We stay. What if I just go like
I'm going, okay? Are you ready?
yeah, I'll stay. Me too.
What, really?
What? I think I'm misunderstanding what you're saying.
I meant
Okay.
deja
Are we ready? Are we ready? Rolling? Okay, and we're back for the first presentation of the afternoon set for the Master Culminating Experiences. And we would like to welcome on stage our old band led by Paul Eirik Melhus. Please clap for Paul. Paul is also one of our oldest members of the Berklee Global Jazz Institute, the family. I think, if I recall well, 2013, went through all of the stages and grew immensely in many, many different ways, as you will see. And Paul is presenting his project called The World Wanderer. His advisor is Carl Riley. Clap for Carl. Thank you, Carl.
Yeah.
Where's Carl? Right here. And we have in the panel the great Jerry Lick. Please clap for Jerry Lick. Thank you for being with us, Jerry. Paul, get it.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. So I'd like to start off by just thanking everybody at the Institute and thanking Marco, Danilo, thanking Carl, Jerry. It's been a remarkable year, and it's really taught me a lot about myself, and also taught me a lot about just life in general and music. And also, I want to congratulate everybody who's already presented. You guys are fantastic, inspiring people, and I love being around you. You give yourselves a hand. Thank you. So yes, today I'm presenting The World Wanderer. It's so in short, The World Wanderer is a suite of music, and it's accompanied by a storyline and a narrative. I wanted to sort of investigate this this sort of medium, the medium of just storytelling through music, and not necessarily a little different than a film. More like I wanted the music to be the sort of main body of work with the narration as a sort of accompaniment. And I'm going to present to you today the first three parts of the suite. The goals I wanted to accomplish with this presentation were I wanted to celebrate the different cultures that this boy who's in the story, he travels through different cultural dimensions, and I just wanted to celebrate the cultures that he travels to for their beauty and also their more ugly sides as well, and all at the same time highlighting real-world conflicts and problems throughout the storytelling. Let me talk to you a little bit about my inspiration and process. So as most of you know, I grew up in Norway. Had nature's had a really profound effect on the way I perceive music and the way I compose. Just briefly, I just love being in nature. Last time I went hiking with my father, I just remember having this serene moment, looking out upon the mountainscape, and it was just, really, I just wanted to capture that essence in the music that I write, and it's just had a really profound effect on the way I compose. And here's some photography by my father. Very proud to. Can we dim the lights a little bit so we can see better? See that? Okay. Wait, that's okay. And here's a picture of me and my father out in the woods. So this is it's very personal to me. And also, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Baca Forest people. I came across them this year, and it was just hearing their music. It was just so organic and very inspiring. It just resonated with me deeply. And I listened to a lot of their music throughout this composition process, and I just wanted to share with you just like a sound clip of some of their music, so you can sort of get the gist of what I'm talking about. Oh, it'd be better if it was plugged in. Sorry about that. Hear some of the melodies. It's very organic, super pentatonic as well, and I wanted to sort of capture that in some of the music that I wrote. And another huge influence that sort of inspired me to do this strings project is the string music of Debussy and Ravel. Ever since it's probably some of the first string compositions I heard, and it just really resonated deeply with me, like the harmonies, the melodies, and so on. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about my composition process. Most of the time composing, I had this sort of this notion of light and dark modes in mind. It's a concept that I learned from Danilo Perez. Talks about how altering notes in two tetrachords that make up a major scale, either lowering them a half step or raising them by a half step, really evokes a certain mood and changes the timbre of that overall chord. And it was just like I had that in mind throughout my compositional process, and just wanted to share that with you. It's Danilo. And another huge influence on my writing process was the triadic chromatic concept by George Garzone, and I just wanted to acknowledge him as well. I use a lot of this notion of chromaticism to sort of write some of the melodic lines that you're about to hear. So, without further ado, I would like to present to you The World Wanderer. So, hope you enjoy. Thank you very much. Standing upon the mountain's tongue, the boy thought, how could such contempt for another manifest itself? He had witnessed the ignorant savage that lies dormant in humanity, revealing its presence, feeding on the unsuspecting. His peers had problems, difficulties with some of the newer residents in their small town. And these residents were different. They had contrasting, ebony, coffee-colored skin. They spoke in a peculiar accent and dressed in a strange way. They had cornered two of the new boys from one of the new families. The boy watched his friends throw rocks and spew profanities he had never heard before, forcing these newcomers to cower, questioning their own existence and its value. In a wave of disgust and cowardice, the young boy, our spectator, ran. He ran from his friends. He ran from his own self, afraid of the outcome of the situation, afraid of his friend's judgment, afraid to stand up for the victims, afraid of the revelations of his true self, bitter because of his own actions, disappointed how everything had happened. He sought refuge in the mountains. He ran until the altitude raised and he could feel his breathing getting heavier and heavier. He reached the tongue of the mountain, overlooking the fjord. Looking across the valley, he saw a white-tailed eagle soaring. As the boy contemplated his actions, the winds around him swirled and gusted in every direction. The wind had a mind of its own, and soon the boy felt compelled by its force. It pushed the boy inland, towards the mountainside, deeper within its forestry. The trees grew taller, and the wind blew less and less. The forest itself was guiding him, carving out a pathway between the shrubs and moss-infested rocks. It was now dusk, and the moonlight shined an eerie twilight that illuminated the boy's path. There was a shroud of fog enveloping the ground, but the path stayed clear within the mist. He came upon a hill that led him down towards a small creek. Darkness had fallen. The water glistened and danced in the moonlight, inviting the boy to follow its lead. The boy eagerly followed the creek, guided by an unseen force he could not describe. After some time walking along the water, the cave entrance stood before him, emanating a faint bluish glow. He walked into the water, following an unexplained will to venture inside. The cave was alive. Upon its walls were glowing colors of blue and green. Bats were flying, looking for prey, disregarding the boy. Dragonflies hovered about. Beetles and other insects scurried across the cave walls. The water felt lukewarm and was completely transparent, revealing the signs of life from within. As the boy ventured deeper into the cave, the water grew deep within it. He lost his footing as the current swept him underwater. It was pulling him down the stream now, and he struggled, gasping for air whenever he could. He saw the luminescent greens and blues fly by him in a strange sort of beauty. Fear consumed him. At the end of the seemingly endless cavern was a drop. He saw the water flow into it rapidly, a cutoff that sent the water downwards towards an unknown fate, a waterfall. He braced himself for the drop, and when it came, his body hurled out and fell abruptly into the water below. He needed air. Swimming up as fast as he could for his own survival, he inhaled, and he saw where this livid water had taken him. The walls around him were glowing the same cerulean and mint colors he had seen before, except this time he was inside a monstrous cavern. He could see stalagmites on the cave ceiling, and there was bright green moss growing all around. Looking around in wonder, he saw something towards the center of the cavern and heard a faint, eerie melody. And again, despite his exhausted lungs and limbs, he moved towards what he saw as a small piece of land. A garden fountain revealed itself at the center, ancient and majestic. The music was emanating from this fountain. His curiosity took over, and he found himself peering downwards into it. The music ringing loud now when he looked within the fountain. He saw himself in a different world, dancing in a festive celebration. The boy peered in, and suddenly he became the boy he saw in the fountain, dancing with different people far away from his home. Having danced for hours, he grew tired. Rain had begun to fall, and the festivities were starting to end. Lightning lit up the sky and what looked like a storm in the distance. Dark clouds loomed over the jungle, and the boy felt uneasy. He knew that something was about to descend. He could feel it in the pit of his stomach, but he couldn't explain it. There was a deafening stillness amongst his new peers. They were all staring in the same direction. The boy turned around to see jet black smoke in the distance, giving off a blacker and darker hue than even the clouds above. Thank you. To be continued.
Paul Melhus. Wow. Paul.
Also, the artwork that you've been seeing up here is by none other than my girlfriend, Natalia Muniz. Give it up for her. I forgot to put this slide up, but this is amazing. Look what she did. Yeah, amazing. But anyway, I'd like to acknowledge the band. Mao Sone, Chris McCarthy, Noam Israel, Hayden Farrar, Laith Sadiq, Tanya, Dan, Marta, and James. And everyone at BGJI, Carl Riley, thank you, Jerry Leak, and of course, Natalia Muniz, my rock, and also my father for the photography. And thank you so much for your time.
Jerry, some comments?
Sure, it was fantastic, absolutely beautiful. Evoked such a great mood. I was taking a couple notes just so I had some ideas, but the opening Cameroon piece, it very much reminded me of Pygmy music, so seems to be a connection sonically there, that culturally, that was very similar to me. So, but you obviously evoked a clear mood in the setting, put us deep into nature with flowing and consistent strings, kind of giving that consistency, tranquil mood, surprises and shifts along the way that nature offers at any moment. It was settling and unsettling at the same time, as you kind of felt the boy's character and also how he was conflicted inside with what was taking place. In part two, the groove really kind of gave us more movement and into the journey, which was really sweet. The parts worked together, but also yet were very independent in their voice and purpose. So there was a lot of continuity and creativity. Groove was fantastic. The composed quality lent itself to shifts in the landscape. So I was very clear in that mood and aesthetic you were trying to bring out. I love the double bass idea with orchestral meets the jazz context, so that was a really, really clever approach. And there was interesting metric modulations for your solo, ebbing and flowing. Mao, at times, he felt like the boy in one section, and then you seemed to take over as that character, so there was kind of a duality going on in the lead voices. Yet very well connected. So a couple more. I think you could speak the narrative a little slower. It was hard to take in all the details because you had a lot of them, and we need to sort of soak them in a little more gradually. The darkness of the night, I thought that could have been even more intense and more unsettling, but it seemed to come through more in the Chris's piano solo, and where the tension really started to really creep in. And I love the kind of the old school vibe that reminded me of Miles at times, taking place in the rhythm section. The sound of Noam's drums and cymbals really had that nice feeling. The 6/8, I thought you could have brought the strings back. I think that we were missing them towards the end. So maybe even during the bass solo, I could see sort of a background quality that the strings could evoke. Because they were in the beginning, but they didn't really come back again. So I think a recapitulation of that would have been a nice full circle completion of the theme. And that's about it, but really fantastic. I loved it. And did you record the piece in the studio as well?
I did. However, the strings were a recent addition, but I did record them. I just had to mix them. So.
Fantastic. Can't wait to hear it.
Great.
Really,
Thank
really,
you, Jerry.
really fresh, unique, and the story is really sweet. So bless you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Paul, that was absolutely wonderful. I really enjoyed it. One of the things that struck me was not only you have a unique voice on saxophone. I love the low notes. I love the altissimo register. You use it so beautifully and so effectively. And it struck me that the usage of the strings here was unusually good in that it blended so well with everything that was going on. It didn't sound like an add-on at all. It sounded like it was necessary. And that's like really hard to accomplish with a small string group and, you know, the combination of musicians you have. So it was really beautiful. I was also thinking, geez, I wish you would play a little bit longer this section. And I said, no, because then you went to something else that was so amazing. I said, no, everything is just the perfect right length to move on. So the flow and the continuity throughout the entire piece was really amazing. I never got bored for a second. And then immediately we're on to something that was just, you know, illustrated the story and what you were talking about so well. And it was just, you know, very, very well done, I thought. Yeah, and overall, I want to comment on the use of dynamics. It's so refreshing. It was so effective and so appropriate at all times. And it really just added to it and added to the overall pleasure of listening to the music and me wanting to sustain myself as a listener to this. So once again, congratulations to you and to all the musicians who did a marvelous job.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. Fantastic performance, beautiful music. I just thought you could have involved the string section a bit more, or quite a bit more, actually.
The what second?
The
section, I'm sorry?
strings.
Oh, strings.
Yeah, the string quintet. You had them in the beginning, but starting in the second movement and on, they hardly played anything. Yeah, you know, and there was so many. You could think of it as call and response between the horns and the. You could have broken up some of the horn lines between the string quartet and you guys. So there's a lot more for you to explore there, in terms of that, and using more percussive effects. They could have been grooving. Also, you think of you know when I write, especially for larger ensembles. I tend to think of if someone is not playing for a long time, they become like dead weight on stage, unless they also double as a dancer. But you know what I mean? So you could have generated even more energy by involving the string quartet in the groove and you know, yeah, all that kind of stuff. Overall, it's really fantastic. But also work on your narrative, because it was hard to follow because you spoke too fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. I was thinking a lot about the time constraints, but that's no excuse. So yeah, I will work on that, definitely.
Well, I was thinking maybe you could have asked Isaac Wilson, which apparently has his second career in narrating, and yeah. No,
Next
but
time.
seriously, maybe you want to consider giving this to somebody else so you don't have to rush from the narrator. I mean, it's nice that you narrated because you are the, but maybe if you relieve that from your, you know, everything else you have to do, you can concentrate on playing as somebody else narrating, and Isaac would have been my first candidate. Paul, I'm, you know, beautiful, evocative, and very inspiring work. Can you tell us a little bit how you came about this project? Like, you know, how did you come to think about this whole thing we just saw?
So there was a lot of, I thought a lot about it. There was a lot of thinking for a while, and not a whole lot of doing. But eventually I got to the doing part. And I think I've always, personally, I've always loved like fantasy, kind of like I was a huge fan of Lord of the Rings when it came out, and also just like cinematic sort of music. And that's kind of what inspired me to do that. It was this love for this sort of mood-creating music, like cinematic experience and that's kind of why I wanted to venture into this medium. And this is obviously just skimming the surface, and I want to keep working at it and keep developing myself as a composer, and eventually even write like a film score. That's like one of my dreams. So that's how I got to that point. So
I can definitely see that. Wonderful job, Paul. Really.
Thank you, Marco.
Alan Chase.
Paul, I thought it was a really effective composition, very exciting. I heard the quintet version before and this one today, and I think the narrative it helped you write it, if I'm understanding. I mean, I know you have the idea about film scoring and telling a story with music. Just a thought for the future that you could contemplate is, you know, maybe you want to do a lot of pieces with narration. That might be true, but another possibility is that you can use tools like that to inspire you and structure a composition, whether the audience hears the narration or whether you leave that a mystery. You know, like if you look at a lot of composers, they have ways of inspiring themselves that are very important to them, but the audience doesn't always know what they are, but they still help structure the music and give it a narrative form and also get you writing, which it's hard to get started. The hardest thing is to start. But you did it, and it's an effective piece. It was very well played, very exciting to hear. I agree with all the other comments about using the strings more. I realized that was a later addition. Witness feels there should have been a soli for the strings, but I just didn't know if everybody heard that. So, but it's just one way to use the strings. But anyway,
That's an inside joke. I don't want to get into right now.
I know. I'm
honest.
sorry.
But thank you for bringing it up, Witness.
He said it so many times that I felt it had to be said on the mic. But no, but congratulations on a very, very effective and big composition. Yeah, and great playing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Paul Melhus, thank you so much. Anybody? Oh, I'm sorry, Carl.
Congratulations. All of these comments are maybe going to my question, next steps for this piece.
Next steps, I plan on continuing the narrative and hopefully eventually coming to a conclusion. But I hope to bring this music to the public and perform it with this band, because these guys played amazingly well.
It's awesome.
And I just want to keep developing myself as a composer, and hopefully through the compositional aspect, it'll change the way I play as well. And I just want to keep writing, basically, and eventually, like I said, finish the narrative. Yeah.
Paul Melhus. Bravo.